Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Tips. I am your host, Marin Smith, content manager here at Grow Schools. And as usual, we're here Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern for 10 minutes discussing the biggest challenges facing school leaders. And this week, I'm welcoming Michael Soh. Hi, Michael.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for being here. We're going to have a discussion on facility decisions that drive growth. And Michael, I know many schools kind of at this point in the year, maybe they're reaching a point where their physical space becomes a barrier to their mission rather than supporting it. And that could come in the form of overcrowded classrooms, outdated facilities, or simply running out of space, can't accommodate more students. And these facility challenges can really impact a school's ability to serve students, their current students effectively, and to welcome more students in. So understanding when and how to make these strategic facility decisions, whether that's renovation, expansion, or moving, buying a new facility, can really transform those barriers into opportunities. So I'm excited to hear the recommendations that you have. I'll start out with sort of a broad question, which is, what strategic question should schools be asking themselves when they're trying to decide, should I renovate, should I expand, or should I relocate entirely?
Yeah, happy to help tackle that question. So when schools are thinking about their long-term facility needs, I would say these are really the most important questions to ask is, what are the fundamental problems with your current space? Is it too few classrooms, lack of specialized lab space, poor accessibility, outdated infrastructure, not enough gym or auditorium space? Another important question would be to understand what is the remaining useful life of the building's core system. So I'm talking about the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, roof, and what is the cost to replace or maintain those. Next, I would ask, what is the current building's layout, and is it flexible enough to meet your future needs? So can walls be moved? Can there be reconfigurations? Can the space be better optimized? Next, I would consider, are there any physical or zoning limitations that prevent your school from expanding? So is the lot size not big enough? Are there setback requirements that would prevent you from building a larger building, and things like historic preservation? Next, I would ask, what is the long-term enrollment projections for your school? How many students are you going to need over the next 5, 10, 20 years? That's important when facility planning. What are non-negotiables for the facility requirements for your school's mission? So do you need a full-size gym, performing arts theater, dedicated makerspace, or more lab space? Those are all important aspects of the school to have. A few other things to keep in mind are like, what is a realistic budget for this project, and what's your affordability? How can you raise capital? Is it through fundraising, grants, donations, or financing? The last few questions are what is an estimated cost for a renovation, expansion, or a relocation? And have you obtained preliminary cost estimates from architects and contractors? And that one can be a tricky one if you don't know exactly what you need, but you get per square foot cost to build, estimate design costs, and just start piecing the project cost together, try to get a general idea. I guess the last thing would be, what is a realistic timeline for when you need this school open? And that would go into planning and just making sure that, those logistics are all planned in terms of, impact to the students during construction. Do you have temporary facilities and things like that? And maybe just one last thing I'd add is, what are some major risks associated with each option? Are there unforeseen structural issues with your current building, or potentially renovating a new building? Undiscovered things like asbestos in the walls, as well as construction delays, permit challenges, and just unexpected costs that arise during the construction process.
Yeah. Lots of complex conversations to have as schools are trying to make that decision. And you touched on a few sort of looking to the future moments. One is, looking 5 to 10 years in the future, perhaps when it comes to enrollment, trying to predict some of these things. But there's also the timing factor that you mentioned right there at the end about, the planning also takes a lot of time, and then finding the right facility takes time if there is going to be a move. So how far in advance, and I know this is going to depend on a lot of factors, but can you give us a ballpark of how far in advance schools should start planning to make sure they have a runway to get themselves where they want to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I'll just generally say facility planning should be long-term, ongoing process. It's when it's like a last-minute rush process when things can go wrong. So as much time ahead in the future as possible. But the answer really depends on the scale and complexity. if you're just adding a few classrooms, it doesn't take as much time to plan. But if you want to build an entirely new campus, then several years in advance are going to be needed to think about the process, to go through feasibility, and to really understand and try to make the right decisions. And just to give a few examples, design process can take anywhere from 3 to 18 months, depending on the size. If it's a small renovation or a smaller building, 3 months, and then it can be up to 18 months or more for large campuses, large buildings. Anything like 20, 30, 40, 50,000 square feet could be on the 18 months plus design scale or design timeline. Permitting process can be very tricky as well. It really depends on the jurisdiction you're in. We've been able to secure a permit in 1 week for a project that had a very anti-growth, anti-building, pro-growth, pro-building building department. We're able to get the permit very quickly, while other projects can take 24 months if there's extensive entitlements and approvals. So things like impact studies, if you're in California, having to go through the CEQA process. In New York, there's ULUP. Things like rezoning or variances to zoning, if this parcel you're looking at doesn't accommodate education use, and other hurdles like city council approval can really add to the approval length. So I guess really just to sum it all up is planning far ahead in advance will really help you to be able to give the appropriate amount of time for design as well as securing permits and construction to get the school open.
Yeah, lots of factors to consider. I want to take a quick pause and welcome those of you joining us a little after the top of the hour. We're here discussing how schools can make smart facility decisions that support growth rather than limit it. And you can catch all of our conversations with experts covering biggest challenges facing school leaders right here, Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So let's get back to our chat with Michael. I have a couple more questions for you. Next, I'm curious your thoughts on some creative design solutions you've seen schools use to maximize their existing space, maybe while they're in that planning phase that you just described.
Yeah, absolutely. We've worked with a lot of schools and a lot of partners that have given us a lot of opportunity to think of some creative solutions. So I'll run through a few that come to mind. First, and I think this is pretty popular and well known within the charter space, is just implementing modular classroom space. You can bring in a modular or portable classroom. It's a really excellent solution for, just bring them in, tie them into utilities, probably a little bit of permitting and construction costs, but much cheaper and much more time. You can get it a lot quicker than building a traditional project. So those are always really good solutions that we offer if the school already hasn't implemented them, to get some extra classroom space to help fill their needs. Other ideas that we've worked with for schools is repurposing hallways, corridors, gyms, and large classrooms. So traditionally hallways are just for transit. A lot of forward-thinking schools are transforming them, the hallways, into learning commons. So modular furniture that moves around, whiteboards, power outlets. So you can turn the hallways into informal study areas, study groups, section off and create quiet spaces for reading, and starting to utilize spaces just beyond the four walls of the classroom. Other things that we've experienced and worked with schools on are things like movable furniture. So instead of having fixed desks and fixed furniture and fixed equipment, to be able to move things around and utilize them in different ways. So a traditional classroom could quickly be turned into a work study group, as well as lab space for hands-on groups. So being able to move things around and be able to have a multi-purpose use for different classrooms and spaces. We've also worked with schools on to help accomplish those. Other important things that kind of go in with the movable, flexible classrooms are retractable walls and partitions. So some schools that we've worked with and designed their spaces, we have a large space that is a multi-purpose, but then we have a movable partition that separates it into two for multiple uses. So different things like that help add to the flexibility. The last few things that come to mind would be utilizing underused space. So if you have basement or attic space that's maybe just used as storage or may not be accessible, to start thinking about how those can be utilized to add things like a new art studio or transform them into a media center. Really depends on the zoning and the allowable use and really the constraints if it's accessible. And maybe some money can be spent to utilize and add a staircase or make those spaces accessible, but to really think about your space and what's being utilized versus not. And then the last thing that comes to mind is to continue to utilize outdoor spaces. So outdoor spaces used as transit areas as well as for playgrounds, but they can also be used for outdoor classrooms, community gardening, and extending the learning environment from inside to outside of the building. So yeah, I'd say those are really some of the cost-effective measures for this additional existing spaces that schools could use.
Yeah. Yeah. Such great ideas. Always important to remain flexible, like you said. And some of those examples are really excellent. So, Michael, I want to thank you for all of your insights today. We try to keep these conversations as close to 10 minutes as we can. But we're here Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, discussing biggest challenges facing school leaders. Lots of Tuesdays out of the month. So you might catch Michael again with even more tips. For those of you watching, you can learn more about facility planning and strategic growth on our website. You can just head over to growschools.com. Thanks again, Michael, and to everyone who joined us today. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Bryn.